Hey guys, so we're up to round 4 of the AFLW season 2025, and we're sort of starting to see a picture of where the teams are all at as we enter into the midpoint of the season. So, without further ado, let's look at how my tipping went last time. So, for the dream time in Darwin, I had Essendon winning by 5, ended up winning by 15, so pretty standard result. That was then followed by Kiawana making easy work of the Giants. I had them winning by 40 and ended up winning by 32. But then got a bit of a surprise. We had Wallachic Marara beating Uriroke when I actually had it the other way. Like, I was doing all right. Like, Uriroke was up, and then there was just a massive 5-goal blitz in the last quarter where Wallachic Marara just absolutely destroyed Uriroke. Then we had Sydney versus Geelong, in which Sydney just won. So I got the tip right. I thought Sydney was going to win a bit more comfortably than that, but Geelong definitely gave the Swans a fight. Then Yaraputi made very easy work of the Suns. I completely underestimated them, thinking they're only going to win by 30, and they ended up winning the biggest margin ever. In fact, it was the biggest AFLW score ever. And a record we only held for less than 22 hours, because we'll get to that game in a sec. But before then, Hawthorn I had winning by 15, and they won by 4 in a score of 14. How do you win an AFL game kicking 14 points? Somehow Hawthorn did. I'm starting to think that they're just going to win sloppy but still win. We'll get to that when we come to the actual game. But anyway, we had Melbourne. I had Melbourne by 42, and they won by 4, and only just won because Collingwood missed a kick after the siren. I don't know how Collingwood remotely made the game close, but is Melbourne struggling from an injury crisis? We'll have to think about that in a sec. Once again, I completely underestimated North Melbourne. I thought Freo would, tighten up their defence after getting smashed by the Brisbane Lions. They decided not to do that and to lose by an even bigger margin. So, figures, I don't know what. How did we lose to Freo? How? This team's... Oh, never mind. Anyway, finally, another upset. I had Brisbane winning by 13, and then Carlton won by 14. Is Carlton good, or is Brisbane bad? I don't know. It's definitely getting some interesting results. But I have appreciated that I've been mostly right with the tips. I've only had two games wrong for the last 2 rounds. So hopefully we can maybe improve it this round and see if we can get our first perfect round. But without further ado, let's dive into that round with our first game in Narm versus Richmond at Casey Fields at 12:35 on the Saturday. So only weekend games today, no Friday or Thursday games. The odds are in this game for Narm, and I think Narm won last year, although I don't particularly remember this game. Obviously, Narm had a big scare yesterday. They almost lost to Collingwood. Is it possible that I know they have a few injuries. Is it possible that those injuries are starting to hurt them? On the other hand, we have Richmond, who obviously hasn't won a game at all this year. I'm not sure I want to say that Richmond are a bad side, or they've just been given some just hard games. But unfortunately, speaking about hard games, this really is just another hard game, unfortunately. Like, Narm, I think, they want to bounce back after that Collingwood game. And I have my theories about Collingwood, which I'll get to in a sec. But for now, I think Narm will be back in strength to try and win again. And I think they're going to win reasonably comfortably. I don't think they're going to do that smashing like they did to St Kilda. So I think they're going to win by 15. Then we have Gold Coast vs GWS. I guess it's now the new spoonball from last week. People's First Stadium at 1:05 on the Saturday. The odds from when I last checked were for Gold Coast, which is odd because I thought GWS would be the team. Either way, when these two teams last met was actually here in Canberra at Monaco Oval, and I remember that game because Gold Coast got a goal after the siren to draw. It could be a draw again because these two teams are both unfortunately very bad in my opinion. I do think GWS has done all better because, Gold Coast obviously had 2 weeks in a row of conceding over 100 points. GWS had that big blowout in the first game, but they've generally kept their next 2 games, well, at least more-ish competitive, if you can call the Crows smashing them by 32 competitive. At least the commentators thought so at 3/4 time for some reason. That's off topic. Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty scrappy game, probably low scoring, but I think at the end GWS will win by, let's say, 4. Then we get Carlton versus Western Bulldogs, Icon Park, 3:05 Saturday. Last time these two teams met, Carlton. No, the last time these teams met, Bulldogs won last year, but I think the odds are on Carlton. But these are two teams that have definitely surprised me this year. I thought these were average teams, and Carlton has proceeded to come into this game, 2-1. On the contrary, the Western Bulldogs obviously had that surprise win against Richmond, although Richmond might be worse than we think, which is probably why I'm edging towards Carlton. The fact that they beat Brisbane, I think, is a massive kudos to them. So I definitely am going to have my money on Carlton for this game, and I'll say they'll win by 8. All right, the next game, Hawthorn versus Uroke at Kazali Stadium up in Cairns this time. 7:15 on Saturday, obviously had to be that late because it's going to be bloody hot up there. Odds are for Hawthorn for this game because I think Hawthorn absolutely dominated Uroke last year. Hawthorn is definitely looking gettable. They have just not had it after beating Brisbane. They have just not looked remotely like a team that's the big high scoring teams that were last year. But at the same time, Uroke had that one amazing win against Kwana, and then they've just they got smashed by Narm, and then they got smashed by Wallace Marara in one quarter. So they're just dropping the ball too much, and I can't give them anything. So I think Hawthorn's going to win, but once again, I think Hawthorn's going to somehow screw this up and only win by like 7. We got Sydney versus Wallop at Henson Park at 1:05 on Sunday. Odds are on Sydney, and I believe Sydney won this game 2 years ago. I think. Wallop, just like Gold Coast, has gone 2 games conceding 100, and they're now up against another reasonably high-scoring team in Sydney. I don't know about Wallop's injury report if Driscoll is out, because if she's out, once again, their defense is going to be just horrendous. It was already pretty horrendous with her in it anyway. So, they didn't really clean it up for the North Melbourne. So I'm sorry, but I'm just going to just go at it. I'm going to say Sydney wins by 50. They're just going to just dominate because I have no faith in Wallop at the moment. Next, we have Kiwana versus Brisbane at Norwood Oval, also at 1:05 on the Sunday. Last time I checked these odds, it was dead even, and I can sort of see why. I think, obviously, last time, and it's because of the combination of the form last year and the form this year, because last year Brisbane played Adelaide twice and won both times, and especially in that prelim final, they just dominate. Adelaide, obviously, they got the lead early on, but Brisbane just went on and just wiped the Crows out of a potential grand final. But at the same time, Brisbane they lost to Hawthorn in a scrappy contest. They lost to Carlton quite convincingly last weekend. Adelaide, obviously, they had the loss to St Kilda, but they then proceeded to have a domination against Geelong and a pretty comfortable win against GWS. So you think Adelaide's in the stronger form, but then you obviously have the forms of Brisbane in years gone by beating the Crows continually. And it's for this reason that I think Kiwana's going to win. But it's going to be I think it's going to be like 3. It's going to be a really, really tight game. What's not going to be so much a tight game is North Melbourne versus Collingwood at Arden Street at 3:05 on the Sunday. Odds are for North. North won this game 3 years ago, although that doesn't really mean much. North's on a tear. For instance, before we know, they might win this game by 100. Although, I do think the Pies are really good at mucking up teams. Like, they obviously mucked us up at the preseason. They mucked up Melbourne last year. They're just really good at just taking a team that's used to playing free-flowing footy and just slowing it down, mucking it up, and keeping the score low. So I'm possibly thinking North could be kept to a reasonably low score, but I don't think Collingwood's necessarily going to score in return. And I think Norwood's class is going to eventually get over the sort of muck Collingwood throws their way, and I'll say North wins by 35. All right, at the same time as well, because we have, 5 games on the Sunday. It's crazy, but obviously we got the men's finals on at the same finals on Saturday, which is probably why this is the case. Anyway, it's Essendon versus Geelong at Windy Hill. Odds are for Geelong on this game, which is odd because Geelong is coming to this game 0-3, while Essendon's coming in 3-0. Now, I think Geelong won last time these two teams met, but again, 2 years ago, what can you take of it? I know a lot of people are feeling bullish on Geelong because they've been sort of having honourable losses. Obviously, I know Essendon won't have too good this time. But, I feel like I just want to keep with the win streak. Like, obviously, Essendon is, on doing all right. And I think they can, put away Geelong. Now, maybe I'm being a bit too bullish on the win look and not looking at how the games actually went on. I will admit, obviously, don't get the chance to watch all these games. But if I had to look at it at the moment, I think also it's a home game for Essendon. I know Yeah. So I'm going to say Essendon win, but let's say it's not going to be very convincing. Let's say Essendon win by a goal, 6 points. And finally, we have Wallatich Morale versus my own Yarraputi at Mineral Resources Park at 5:05 on the Sunday. I don't know how it's 4 rounds and we're once again at the tail end of the round. It kind of sucks that I have to wait all weekend for this game, but regardless, last time we played, Yarraputi won. That was that interesting game where we kicked nothing in the first quarter and then proceeded to take the lead in the second quarter and then sort of win out pretty comfortably. It was definitely an interesting game. It was sort of definitely around the start of our big 8-game win streak. Obviously, it's going to be interesting about who's improved more this year. Obviously, I think Wallace Morara has shown a lot of improvement, obviously with their domination of the Saints in the fourth quarter last week. Obviously, they came close to beating Essendon, and obviously they had a decent win against Gold Coast. Although Yarraputi's win against Gold Coast was arguably more dominant. So I definitely think we're sort of an evenly matched team. And also, I have to also mention that we potentially got news that Lauren Young is going to be joining the team this time. Although, obviously, coming in after 2 years of not playing football, we don't know how well she'll be. But I'm definitely very excited if she does end up debuting this week. And also need to mention that Port does. It's going to be an interesting thing. I think a lot of it's going to be about whether or not Port leak goals. We leaked a lot of goals against Gold Coast last week. And if that happens again, I could definitely see Wallace and Morara doing what they did to St Kilda and getting another big goal run on us and winning. But I think just because we've obviously got, potentially, Young coming into the side, I think Borg's going to be much better. I think we'll be able to potentially shut down another goal run and win by 10. So just to remind everybody, I have Nam winning by 15, GWS winning by 4, Carlton winning by 8, Hawthorn by 7, Sydney by 50, Kawana by 3, North by 35, Essendon by 6, and Yarraputi by 10. So come back next time to see how well I did in my predictions, and until then, let's go Power!